Okay, perfect. Thank you. Welcome everyone to our first block of the concurrent sessions. We also welcome the audience who is following us through our fan page on Facebook. Remember that at the end, there will be 7 minutes for questions, and also please mute your microphones and turn off your camera during the presentation to favor the internet connection and stability. So without further ado, let's begin. We welcome Francia Arriagada from INACAP Institute, who is presenting the effect of emotional valence on auditory word recognition memory. We would like to remind the presenter to stick to the 20 minutes. Okay, Francisca, the stage is yours. Francia, yes. Sorry, Francia. Excuse me, sorry.
Don't worry. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. As Daniela has said, I'm going to talk about the effect of emotional valence on auditory word recognition memory. So my principal aim today is to present background information in relation to emotional valence and what native and second language studies have discovered regarding emotion language processing. Afterwards, I will concentrate on an experiment that we carry out to explore the effect of emotional valence on auditory word recognition memory. Well, we know that emotional contents, such as pictures, stories, or even single words that do not necessarily refer to emotions, like word, evoke strong emotional reactions. Our study dealt with emotionally charged words and their effect on memory. Well, let's start with a little bit of background information. Emotion words, simply understood as words that refer to actual emotions, describe behaviors related to particular emotions, or words that do not refer to emotions directly, but have an emotional component. Well, researchers interested in the relation between language and emotion explore how emotionally charged words are encoded, stored, and retrieved during language processing and learning in first and second languages. From all the components that distinguish emotion words, emotional valence is widely considered as the most important dimension, an essential component which generalizes very well across studies and languages. The ANU norms present the ratings for valence and other two dimensions, dominance and arousal, of nearly 14,000 words in English. In relation to the study of emotion words in the native language domain, researchers have found that emotionally valence words are better and more easily processed and recalled than neutral words. This has been observed in the second language domain as well. Researchers have found a processing advantage of emotion words over neutral words in bilingual's second language. Nevertheless, there is lack of research in the foreign language domain. The majority of research has been carried out in the native language domain, especially with English-speaking participants. So emotional valence is acknowledged as the most critical dimension in the processing of emotional vocabulary. Emotional valence describes the pleasantness and unpleasantness or unpleasantness of a stimulus. It refers to the emotions invoked by a word going from unhappy to happy. The annual scale ranges from 1 to 9. In the case of valence, the scale goes from 1, ranked as unpleasant or sad, to 9, ranked as pleasant or happy. So a word closer to 1 would be considered as negative. For example, abuse, which has a valence rating of 1.8. While a word closer to 9 would be considered as positive. For example, miracle, which has a valence rating of 8.6. Words can be ranked at intermediate feelings of pleasure too. These are considered neutral words. They don't evoke a happy or unhappy feeling. And they are ranked within a 5 at the scale. For example, scissors, it's a word that's considered a neutral word, and the valence rating is 5.05. So one two studies reveal in relation to emotion words in the native language versus second or foreign language. Well, studies have shown that native language is usually experienced as more emotionally intense than languages acquired later in life. Researchers have also found that positive and negative words are more memorable than neutral words. They have found an overall facilitatory effect of the emotional valence while processing verbal stimuli in lexical decision tasks. Most studies in the native language domain suggest no differences in polarity for emotion words over neutral words. On the other hand, Ferré claims that only positive words are better remembered and than neutral words when physically encoded. So although there is a strong belief that emotion words in a second language are not experienced or feel in the same way that emotion words in the first language, evidence suggests that emotion words, positive or negative, are processed faster than neutral words in the second language. Researchers also have found that recall of positive words is significantly greater than for negative and neutral words in second language studies and foreign language studies. So in our study, we decided not to work with written words, but oral stimuli. Therefore, the research question that we came up with was, what is the effect of emotional valence on auditory word recognition memory of words in English as a foreign language? The general objective was to investigate the effect of emotional valence on auditory word recognition memory in English as a foreign language. The specific objectives were to determine the effect of emotional valence on accuracy and reaction times for auditory word recognition memory. We also hypothesized that emotion words would be better recognized than neutral words in auditory word recognition memory. The variables in the study were valence, the independent variable, percent accuracy and reaction times as dependent variables. Percent accuracy refers to the percent of correct responses obtained in the auditory word recognition memory task. And reaction times refer to the milliseconds registered in the auditory word recognition memory task. There were also control variables related to the target words. Target words were matched as tightly as possible for frequency, length, and concreteness. Okay, well, with respect to the method, first the participants, we recruited 48 undergraduate students, 45 males and 3 females, mean age 20.9, and they were all native speakers of Spanish, learners of English as a foreign language. They declare that the foreign language, in this case English, was mostly learned through formal instruction in the classroom. The participants also admitted to never have visited an English-speaking country. They also self-rated their English proficiency across all 4 skills in a scale from 1 to 7, and the mean was 3.6. They also took the Lexdale test, obtaining 55.59%, the mean, which can be regarded at a B1 level. Well, the materials used in our study were a set of 12 videos. These videos were real-life news telecasts in English. The videos were selected from Samity's 2019 database. In this database, videos are rated by their affective content. So we selected 4 emotionally negative, 4 positive, and 4 neutral videos. The clip's overall running time was 30 minutes and 15 seconds. We presented each video 3 times, and they were randomized so they wouldn't be presented by their affective valence or emotional valence. We also selected 48 target words from the videos, 2 nouns and 2 adjectives for each video. So we had 3 sets of target words, 16 emotionally negative, 16 positive, and 16 neutral words. An analysis of variance ANOVA confirmed that the 3 types of words, negative, neutral, and positive, were not significantly different in length, frequency, and concreteness, the control variables. So this table, table 1, shows the selection of videos from Samiris Norm Video Database Study. Here you can see the video number from the original database, the duration in seconds for each video, the year, short label, so you can get an idea of the content of the videos. For example, dolphins save, how babies learn. It's a video in the neutral condition. Young mother shot, a video in the negative condition, and the valence rating mean for each one of the videos. Here we can see an example video for each condition. So this video was the most negative video. It was about US prison torture. The valence rating for this video was 1.630. And the target words that we selected from this video were stress, pain, toxic, and vicious. An example for the neutral condition is this video, Institute of Hope, has a valence rating of 5.980. And the target words that we selected from this video were building, generic, nation, and rare. This is the most positive video, Dolphins Saved, has a valence rating of 8.021. And the target words that we selected from this video were reunion, vibrant, island, and healthy. So it's important to note that the valence of target words corresponded to the mean valence rating of videos. In simple words, negative target words were found in negative videos, neutral target words were found in neutral videos, and positive target words were found in positive videos. Here's an example of a video in the positive condition. The video is about a dog fetch machine. The valence rating mean for this video is 7.391. And the target words that we selected from this video were clever, pet, neat, and affection. I think that there's a microphone on. Well, as you can see, all the headlines were blurred. So in this way, we ensured that word recognition could only rely on the participants' listening skills. This table, table 2, displays the 48 target words per video. So you can see the video number for the four negative videos and the target words for the neutral condition and positive condition. So the procedure. So the data collection procedure is presented in this figure. We collected the data in 2 weeks by the end of 2019, so before the coronavirus. In the first session, participants completed a written consent form. Then they completed the language history questionnaire. And finally, they took the test, the Lexdale test. So this was a brief session. It took 25 minutes or so. In the second session, a week after, participants watched the videos, for 30 minutes, and that's video treatment. And right after, without notice, they completed the auditory word recognition memory task, the experimental task, which was a computer-based test. So this task took 10 minutes or so. So the session took 45 minutes or so. So in relation to the auditory word recognition memory task, the experimental task, well, this task consisted of the following sequence of events. So we presented the 48 target words and 48 fillers, words with similar characteristics of the target words. We presented these words in the oral form, auditory stimulus, and the audios were selected from Tucker 2019 database. The task, as I already said, was a computer-based test. Each participant had a computer to complete the task and headsets. So each participant listened to the 96 words, the 48 fillers and the 48 target words, which were randomized, of course. And then they had to select the Y key, from the keyboard, or the N key. So they would listen to a word and they had 3 seconds to choose one of these keys. Y key representing yes, I have heard the word in the videos, or the N key representing no, I have not heard the word in the videos. So in this way, we gather the data for the accuracy and reaction times, the percent of correct responses, and the milliseconds registered for this task. So the data analysis and the results of our study. Well, we use linear and generalized mixed effects models with cross-random effects to assess the effect of valence and L2 proficiency on reaction times and accuracy. We explored the effect of L2 proficiency just as a covariate. Multiple comparisons were also conducted to determine statistically significant differences between the different levels of valence. Table 3 shows the mean reaction times and accuracy. So the lowest reaction times, meaning the fastest responses, were for words in the positive condition, then negative condition, and finally neutral condition. The highest percent of accuracy was for words in the positive condition too. And then neutral condition, finally negative condition, as it can be appreciated in the graphs as well. Okay, so in relation to reaction times, linear mixed effects model on reaction times showed just a marginally significant effect of proficiency, but a significant main effect of valence with a trend towards the positive condition on reaction times. Multiple comparisons did not show any differences between neutral and negative words, but significantly greater, faster reaction times for positive than negative and positive than neutral words. In relation to accuracy, logistic mixed effects model on accuracy showed no significant effect of proficiency, but again, a significant main effect of valence with a trend towards the positive condition on accuracy. Multiple comparisons show no differences between neutral and negative words, but significantly better accuracy for positive than negative and positive than neutral words. So to finish the discussion, we have to know the novelty of the study. To our knowledge, this is the first attempt to assess the effect of emotional valence on auditory word recognition memory in English as a foreign language by using authentic videos with Spanish speakers residing in their L1 speaking country. The results of our study showed a significant main effect of emotional valence on reaction times and accuracy in the auditory word recognition memory task. We found an advantage for positive words over neutral and negative words, with no differences between neutral and negative stimuli for both reaction times and accuracy. Our results are in line with previous studies that have also exhibited a trend towards the positive condition in a second language and a foreign language. The positivity bias effect could be explained by the density hypothesis, which states that positive verbal stimuli are higher in density or more densely clustering memory than negative stimuli. The systematic review about emotional valence and word processing by Goshka also reveals advantage for words in the positive condition. The researchers found that only a minority of studies, about 11%, presented better or faster processing of negative words over positive words. Well, that's it. Thank you very much. Thanks to all attendees for your attention.
Thank you, Francisca. And now as for the audience, please feel free to turn on your cameras and open your microphones if you have any questions for the presenter. You can also use the chat if you want, or reaction features on Facebook, on Zoom, sorry. Are there any questions?
Daniela?
Yes.
I have a question. Not Daniela, Francia.
Francia. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I was looking at Daniela there. Well, first of all, thank you for a very interesting presentation, right? And my question is, what are the projections of this study?
Okay, so the projections are recruiting a sample of participants with higher proficiency level of English. Yeah, since the sample in the study were participants with a B1 level, so it's like low intermediate level of English, and also having a more gender balanced sample of participants, since participants in our study were 45 males and just 3 females. Yeah, and also exploring or including other memory tests. Yeah, for example, a recall test.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor Monica. Is there any other questions?
The chat room, Daniela.
There's one question here. Yes, Daniela, you can read it.
Okay, Marco says, thank you for your interesting presentation. What would be the practical significance of your findings? Do you think that the topics of discussion in the L2 classroom should portray positive feelings?
Okay, so thank you, Marco. Well, I think that the practical significance of my findings are first to acknowledge the importance of emotional valence on word recognition memory. Yeah, we know that emotional valence has an important effect on word recognition. Yeah, emotion words are processed faster, better, than neutral words. So if you're referring to the L2 classroom, maybe teachers or L2 instructors could include emotional stimuli. And not just words, but pictures, videos. Yeah.
I got another question, and it has to do with the difference between concrete and abstract words. Did you find any difference? I mean, any significant differences on that?
Okay, so Altarriba, yeah, she claims that there is a difference between concrete and abstract words. Like she says that we have concrete words, abstract words, and emotion words.
Yeah.
But I don't know, but I kind of disagree with that, because we have abstract words, which are emotion words as well.
Right.
Yeah. So I didn't follow Altarriba's, I don't know how to say it, but studies, but I decided to follow other studies that do not separate abstract words from concrete words and emotion words. Yeah, all words can have an affective component to a lower or higher degree.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other question? No?
No?
No questions from Facebook? Okay. So
No.
Thank you for all your questions. And I would also like to thank Francisca for a very insightful presentation. I'm sure everyone liked it. And now we move on to the next presentation, starting in a few minutes. The title of the next presentation for this room is Netflix for Language Learning, Individual Trajectories in Intra-formal L2 Viewing. If you want to switch rooms, remember you have about 2 minutes to do so. Please check our website and our program to find the corresponding links for the presentations. Okay, thank you all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Francia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Francia.
Great to see you, Antonie.
Hey, how are you? I'm very early in my office and there's one person in the next office next to me. Can you believe it? Yeah, interesting. You'd be very surprised to hear me talking as well.
Okay. Yeah, but you see, there is always someone else who works harder than us.
Isn't that amazing, eh? Whatever time you go on the street or you come to work, there's always somebody else, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just tuning in. It's just too early. It's nice that everything is online, so I can catch up on the keynotes, but later on.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to start in a few minutes.
Yeah. So everything is very well organized, I say. It's looking very good.
Thank you. We've tried to do our best.
And very nice booklet as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, just like the real thing almost. Although I would prefer to be in Valparaiso.
Of course. Remember I told you about there might be an opportunity for you to come. So.
Oh well, it might have been another year or two.
Of course, do remember we talk about it. Okay. Maybe it's time for us to keep quiet. So because yeah, we're gonna get formal now.
Yeah, 2 minutes more. Are you ready, Antonie?
I'm ready.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, so welcome to our second presentation of the block of concurrent sessions. My name is Daniela Ramirez, and together with Professor Enzo Pescara, we will be chairing this session. Please mute your microphones and turn off the camera during the presentation. Remember that at the end, there will be 7 minutes for questions. Also, for the audience following us in our Facebook live transmission, do not forget to leave your comments. And we welcome Professor Antonie Alm from University of Otago, who is presenting Netflix for language learning, individual trajectories in intra-formal L2 viewing. So the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Good to be here. Good to see you. So I'm presenting on an extract of a larger project which I've conducted last year on viewing Netflix as a intra-formal learning activity. As you will be aware, Netflix is available around the world. And the question is actually rather, where is it not available? So it's a really, to me, an amazing thing that has happened in the last few years, that we have been given that opportunity to access foreign language content without much difficulty. And there's even complaints I hear in the American media that there is too much foreign language content. So we have over 60 languages represented, which of course is way more than we would be able to offer at any formal institution. So really a great resource for people to engage both formally and informally in L2 viewing. So L2 viewing, now I just saw the titles. There was, I think, another presentation on extensive formal viewing in this stream here. So of course there have been different ways of implementing that in a very structured way. But in addition to that, many people engage in informal L2 viewing as well, just having sites like Netflix, and of course there are many others as well, where you can access international series and movies. And if you look a bit online, you don't have to look very far to see language learners, informal language learners, who are writing their blogs or informal language groups that come together to discuss their informal learning experiences and sharing their experiences for newcomers. Also in that area are developers who are developing tools to enhance or to support that informal learning. And those developers are not necessarily language educators or professionals, but they're just out of a gut feeling develop programs to support language learners. And it's one of those programs which I will include in my presentation today. From that combination of course, wanting to use interesting and engaging materials for our language learners, and the informal trend where we have more and more material online available and more people engaging, I have what I think is a nice kind of putting those two areas together, what I call the intra-formal L2 viewing, which ideally builds on the prior learning experiences. So assuming that our language learners have been exposed to or are aware of the possibility of viewing L2 content. And so building on that, I'm attempting to provide a structure and support for the students to continue that engagement, to explore further content and learning tools, support them in their strategy to enhance their learning, and also to have a platform for peer interaction where they can share their experiences and learn from each other as well. So this is kind of the little way I like to present it. So we're having the formal and the informal benefiting from each other, which also means you have the errors going back from the formal to the informal, because we want students, of course, to solidify their knowledge in the formal, supported by the formal environment, and after the completion of the project, go back into the informal and continue their own self-guided learning experiences. That also then connects to the concept of agency, of course, so our capacity to act in the world. So how do we optimize the conditions of our own learning with the resources that are available to us in a multilingual world, as Lars Freeman says, to optimize the opportunities that we have. And then the next step then would be, how do we do that in a classroom? So we need to recognize that learners have their own agency, they have their motivation, they have their preferences, they have things they don't like, they have approaches that they favor, and their dislike. So we want to enhance that agency, so to support the strength of our students and also enable them to use the resources that will help them to be motivated to engage in that activity. The analytical framework which I have used to analyze my data is engagement with language as conceptualized by Svolberg, who focuses not just on engagement as behavior, how we do things, but really how we engagement with the language on a cognitive level, on an affective level, and on a social level. So those concepts will come up throughout my talk. Okay, so my two research questions are, so what are the similarities and differences in language engagement between individual language learners who have the choice of viewing L2 content and their linguistic tools? And how do they differ in terms of cognitive, affective, and social engagement with language? So what I have done, I had a data set, well, I had two classes, a German and a Spanish class of 39 students, and had complete data sets of my qualitative or quantitative of 22. And of those 22, German students, I have chosen 4 different profiles, and those are the profiles I will present to you today. And I've chosen those 4 because they had quite different background in their informal use of using Netflix to watch German, mainly German series. Yeah, so I will talk about their experiences and how they use a specific tool, which is called LLN, and LLN is short for Language Learning with Netflix, which is the name of the extension. So if you want to go on Chrome, you can just search for that. I think there's actually a few different ones of that same name because it's quite a popular thing and people have been imitating that. And others might be just as good, but that's the one I'm using here, Language Learning with Netflix. And if you go on Chrome, you can install it on your browser. And once then you open your Netflix, you have a number of features which will support your viewing for comprehension, but also for learning. So you have things that you can see on that screenshot here. You have, for instance, dual subtitles that you can program, which means you have the caption on top and you have the English subtitle on the bottom. And you can play with that. You can activate and deactivate different tools, and I will present those throughout my talk today. So these are the 4 profiles, slightly changed. I start with Tammy. Tammy is a bit older than the average 20-year-old student, and she has already learned Spanish. So she's a Kiwi, a New Zealander. She has learned Spanish, and she has watched lots of different Spanish series to learn Spanish, and really thought it was very helpful. So she has her own account. She watches a lot of Netflix, and she really found that having that extension was a game changer because it allowed her to really comprehend German at a very basic level because she started German after she learned Spanish. And she watched during the project, she watched 2 series, as you can see on the bottom. Then we have Alicia, who really feels she is a professional. She really knows Netflix inside out. It's really her thing. She already started watching Netflix in German at high school, has her own account, watches also a lot of Netflix in her free time, both in German and in English. And really, it's a social thing. She kind of runs Netflix in the background. Like my generation used to have a radio, they have Netflix in the background as wallpaper. And she watched also 2 series. Then we have Eric, who really doesn't like Netflix. So he feels that Netflix is a major distraction of life. And actually in English, he has access, but he is not really into it. And so his consumption is quite low. So no Netflix, although he has been in Germany and has been watching television there, he has no Netflix experience, but also watched 2 series in the project. And then we have Carol, quite different character again. She said they are quite old-fashioned, that no Netflix, no account, and but then she engaged quite vividly in Dark and was looking forward to the next season coming out after the completion of the project. Okay, so those students have been asked before we started the project what they think could be an advantage of watching Netflix. And those who hadn't watched anything, they had a very, very short answer. Well, hearing it spoken would be a great thing. Whereas those who had a bit more experience actually had much more to say. So just great to relax while hearing it. You can do it every day. You can hear genuine phrases, so much more to say, but also that much more to say about the negatives. So so with not much previous experiences, I feel the dialogue will be too fast. So maybe not even doing it because it's going to be too difficult, which of course was something we wanted to overcome. And here, but interestingly, I thought already here in the people with previous experiences saying, well, a problem really could be by having subtitles is that you read instead of listening, and that the reading would overtake the listening. So that was something that already noticed, so a bit more differentiated here in their experiences. So now I'm just going through a few quotes for each of those participants. So so we have Tammy here, who started watching Netflix with English subtitles and was very pleased that she could now start actually comprehending things, having the German subtitles. So that was an important switch for her. She really liked that LLN, which she called a game changer. So now I have done things here. So once you open that, so I have a few little videos. I'm not quite sure how this is going to work over Zoom, but so I'm just applying this. So you see it automatically stops. It stops again. And then I push the space bar.
Vielleicht ist diese Kugel ja gar nicht abgefeuert worden.
So by default, the video plays and is stopped after each subtitle. And then you have to push the space bar to make it continue. You can also deactivate that, but this way you actually have time to read those two lines as well. But of course, it slows the episode. It slows the whole viewing thing down. So if you watch an episode of an hour, it could easily be 2 hours. So that it's kind of, you have to weigh what is more important, to understand everything or actually to enjoy the viewing. Oops, go to the next slide. So at the beginning, she quite liked that. She was awesome having that. But well, a bit too fast. She did the auto pause function, but that was just too much time. So a great idea to do it in theory, but then you want to enjoy your Netflix as well. So in the end, she just used the German subtitles and used a dictionary function, which I will show you in a minute as well. She also changed the series. She realized that Barbie and Berlin was way too complicated, and she really wanted to enjoy something. She just didn't want it to be too challenged, too difficult, something that she can enjoy with vocabulary that she can learn, which is helpful to talk with her German friends. And once she found the right series, she watched it in one go. So super binge watching. She watched the whole series in one weekend. So this is the way she does it. And she found out through this that she really wants to enjoy it. It's great to learn a few things as well, but she really wants to enjoy it and relax while she's watching Netflix. So much more like her previous experiences in Spanish and also in English. Then we have Tammy, the expert, the professional, who watched Dark, which is a very popular German series in high school, but with English subtitles. And looking back in the second focus group interview, as the letters say here, I was a stupid year 13 student. So I didn't even think I could do any learning. I just did it for entertainment. So she's reflecting things now she knows. And she has explored a lot of different features throughout the projects and how she could optimize her viewing experiences. So she does it in a very comfortable way with a coffee on the couch later on, because this actually happened, you know, even in New Zealand, we had a seven-week lockdown. So that actually happened during lockdown as well, which was very well timed. So having a comfortable experience was really important. She really likes that series, We Are the Wave, because it's set in a high school and she remembers her feeling when she was in high school. So we have that emotional connection to the series, to the content. And then she quite nicely, I just put that in, she says quite nice while she's on lockdown that she can watch Netflix, take a break from other university work and her family, and watch Netflix series instead, learning interesting vocabulary. And these are all written in German. I have translated them, so they're translations. They had to reflect in German on the viewing experiences. Are you crazy? You guys are totally nuts. So she feels those are phrases that she learned in the Netflix series, and that they were very useful for self-isolation during that time. Then what she did, she used what's called the hidden subtitles. Let us show that again. So what you can do, you can obscure the English subtitle, but as you go over with the cursor, it reappears. But the next subline, it's obscured again. So you can have a temporary help. So you kind of have a scaffolded, if you want, so scaffolding. And of course, you can leave the cursor and it stays on there. And they admitted sometimes it happened, but you kind of have a bit of support, but you're not completely reliant on that. You're not too tempted to go back onto the English. The other thing she found out, which was great, you can slow it down. And now you can slow down Netflix as well. That is a new feature that I think was introduced last year, but it's very slow. So Netflix is 0.75, which is just a bit distorted. And here you can slow it down to 0.0875, which is just slow enough so you can hear it better, but it's not distorted. You can save words with that app, with the extension as well. So once you see a word that you want to remember, so these are German filler words, which are quite difficult to explain, you can give it a color, and then every time that that word appears in your subtitle, it reappears. So it will be reinforced as you watch your series as well, and then you can save it as well and review it later on. She also found something she hadn't done before, that by watching an episode for a second time, things are so much easier. What a surprise. Of course, we all know that, but it's really nice if when students make those own experiences and they're here and they feel they can hear the language. Okay, and this student here really felt that after the completion of the project, she was ready to watch series outside of Netflix as well. So she wasn't constrained to Netflix, which maybe has 20 series only. Of course, expectations are quite high these days of having a really big choice. She was very well equipped to watch Netflix German series outside. Now I'm keeping an eye on the time. So I will go a bit faster over the two other candidates I have here. Here's the guy who prefers German over English Netflix because it's more challenging, it's more interesting. So he doesn't really like binge watching at all. He likes the idea of watching the thing once a week. So quite a different, more conservative kind of style. Really likes the LLN, likes the way how he can structure his viewing experience, has discovered that he can use a vocab app that is integrated here. So he texts me about his discovery here. Realizes though that although he really likes just learning words, that having the context is really important. So that's something he learned by also by coloring the words, which gave him just that clue to give him a better understanding of the whole thing. And also, instead of turning off the subtitles, he closes his eyes to get to just focusing more on the listening experience here. He really liked the cognitive challenge and feels that that extension enables him to learn smart and improve his learning. Then we have Carol, who I said didn't have Netflix. They still go to the DVD shop and rent out their videos. So and she was quite worried about that whole thing, that would be too much for her. Then she was quite also had a cognitive approach. She really liked things like you see here, another screenshot here. You can also have the whole transcript appearing on the right, so you can read ahead. So she would read ahead and then she would listen. And then she kind of changed that approach where she would first listen and then read. So she kind of played with that, the different modalities and how she could process them. By mistake, she found the audio descriptions. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. So that's for the hearing impaired. You can also have a track that describes what is happening. So she found that by mistake. So let's show that very briefly as well, how that works. So
Ein Flug über den Wald. Die grünen Baumwipfel wogen leicht im Wind. Claudia schiebt Bernd im Rollstuhl auf eine umzäunte Fläche zwischen Bäumen zu. Vor einem Tor halten sie an.
Okay.
Der Zaun ist
So you don't have to understand German, but you see there's lots more descriptive language happening, and that can be quite overwhelming, but it's a different listening experience. So because if you have, of course, subtitles, you can read, but now she said it forced her to sit and listen, and even if she didn't understand everything, it gave her a different way of attending to input in a different way. So she really liked that idea of sometimes just listening, and maybe even if you don't understand, and then having this change to having subtitles and being more focused on the content. So she felt my brain is melting, she writes. So really, really difficult. I mean, but really challenged by that as well. So what she was really anxious before, it turned into a really interesting experience for her. And she can't wait now to what was then in May. In June, the next season was released. So she was very happy then to view the next season on her own after the completion of the project. So how did the candidates, how did the students engage? So we have the cognitive engagement with language. So what I've done here, you have my scale from strongly agree to strongly disagree, from dark blue to light blue. So we have Eric and Carol who really enjoy the cognitive, so they scored very high, and the other two a bit lower, but they had very individual approaches. So they all used the tools in a different individual way. So everybody really had not only their own series, but also they had their own way of optimizing the tools at their disposition. Effective, really important. So they all gained confidence watching second language Netflix. And really important that effective, so having a comfortable place, finding entertaining was more important for the two who had watched Netflix before than the ones who discovered it and made it more of a learning exercise. And finally, the social, which I thought was really nice as well. So we had Alicia and Tammy, so the first two people I introduced who really enjoyed the entertainment aspect of it. They really wanted to watch it to learn phrases as well. And they also found that it was easier. They would watch an episode before they went to a German class or went to another social event because it helped them to actually produce German. So this was a nice kind of distinction. And when I then did the analysis here of my of the different items of my survey, you can see in the lowest line here that the social was stronger in Tammy and Alicia than it was on the other side in Eric and Carol. And the one who certainly was most cognitively involved, whose brain was melting, is Carol. You will see has the highest percentage here on the cognitive engagement with language. And that is it. So here you have a nice little selection of series in case you're interested. But yes, so just a snapshot of what happened to four of the students, just to highlight that the more we tap into those experiences that students have, the more we really need to also to understand and to consider the individual experiences, which we, if given the space, they develop also in very different ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for your presentation. Now, as for the audience, please free to turn on your cameras and open your microphones if you have a question for the presenter. You can also use the chat if you want. Is there any questions?
There are no questions on Facebook yet, but I don't know if I may ask one question. Yes, thank you very much. Hello, thank you very much for your presentation. It was really interesting. Personally, I've always been fascinated by this way of learning new languages through films, TV series, etc. So my question for you is, I don't know if you've noticed more effective results in beginners or in more advanced learners of a language using this kind of way of learning?
Well, I do this with intermediate learners because that I feel is a great space, because it's a space where students discover they can do things on their own. They think, you have seen the last two students, they didn't think it was an option for them to even look. I mean, they knew about Netflix, but they wouldn't do it. So by putting them in the group, and of course, I mean, I don't know, but in New Zealand, we don't have that many language learners and our classes are quite mixed. So even intermediate, we have more advanced and less skilled students, but less proficient students as well. So there is this energy, this dynamic where the more proficient give ideas to the less proficient as well. And that peer interaction is really important. So students who are not that proficient, I think, benefit as well, but they need more help. And if they go then to a difficult series like Babylon Berlin, which is super complex in language and plot, well, I might discourage them and say, well, why don't you do something like a youth series, which is a bit easier? Or I would even go, you don't have to go on Netflix. There is other things made for language learners. If you want to do that, that's fine as well. So I will try to guide them, because we don't want them to have a frustrating experience and then switch off because it was just too hard. I had that item in my survey, so I didn't enjoy it because it was too hard, but nobody ticked that. So they all found some kind of ways of, be it by looking more at the English subtitles, by maybe to get into it. I even had in the previous, because I've done this a number of times now, in the previous around a student who watched the first episode dubbed in English just to get into it. So they knew what was happening, and the voices are different. So they got into it, and then they kind of changed. So now I know what it's about. I like the series. I know I like it. I'm starting to be committed, and now I'm going to switch it to German, and you kind of change the scaffolding over time.
Thank you very much.
And Viviana Rojas has a question. She says, would you recommend this experience for advanced learners or just beginners?
Well, similar question, isn't it? So
Mm.
the more advanced, I think the more choices you have to give as well, because the more the advanced are, the more practices they have. So I think, and yeah, beginners, try it. I would introduce it at intermediate, because I think you do different things with your learners at different stages. And it's quite nice not to, I mean, it's not the only thing you can do, obviously. So it's quite nice to introduce different things at different levels.
And Professor Wanther Wyeth says, thank you so much. I can't wait to try this with my students.
Right. Also, and if you do try it, I mean, if you want to be in touch, I mean, I'm really interested to hear your experiences, what you're doing. So yeah, so please, I mean, my name is, you have my email down here, so please get in touch if you have any other ideas, or if you've done similar things and maybe you want to do something together. So I'm really interested to share those ideas.
Any other questions?
Anthony? Yes, I have a question. It has to do with, choice, learner choice. So you mentioned that you give them the choice to watch whatever they want, or you guide them to what?
Well, I give them a list. I give them a list. But I asked them also, what have you done? How have you chosen your series? So I asked that. And so very few said they looked at the list. They said because they've heard of it, because their friends have watched the series, because they are all on Netflix after all, or because other students had watched it. So there is kind of I mean, of course I give a list because, I mean, give them choices. Initially what I've done when I started doing that, I played some trailers in class just to, to give them some ideas, yeah. But it's interesting what they come up with. They're looking things I would have never thought they would watch. So yeah. But also if they don't know, I would give them some suggestions as well. Yeah.
But do you classify those according to genre or according to speakers, to topic, to, I don't know, you just give them a list of what you find it might be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they can find series in English. I mean, that's part of the thing. I want them to be able to look for things as well. Yeah. And I let them make mistakes. I mean, some of them did the Babylon Berlin, my famous example, and I knew it wouldn't work, and it didn't work. And that's the experience. But of course, once they recover from that and they know they can do something else, I think there's learning in that as well.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for all your questions. And I would like to thank Professor Antonie for a very insightful and informative presentation. Now we move on to the next presentation, starting in a few minutes. The title of the next presentation for this room is Redesigning Task for Listening Interaction. If you want to switch rooms, remember you have about 2 minutes to do so. Okay. Good.
So I've just downloaded that language learning with Netflix. Have a look at that later. Looks really cool, doesn't it?
Okay. Hi, Jonathon.
Yeah, morning. Oh, afternoon for you.
Afternoon, yes. Are you ready?
Yeah. Shall I start now?
Okay, let's
okay.
wait 1 minute. Oh, now we're
yeah.
ready. Okay, so now it's time for the last presentation of this set of concurrent sessions. My name is Daniela Ramirez, and together with Professor Enzo Pescara, we will be chairing this presentation. We remind the audience in Zoom that they need to mute their microphones and turn off their camera during the presentation. Also, for the audience following us on our Facebook Live transmission, do not forget to leave your comments, please. And we welcome Professor Jonathon Ryan from Waikato Institute of Technology, who is presenting Redesigning Task for Listening Interaction. So the stage is yours.
Good, thank you very much. Yeah, it's a little bit early in the morning here. So like the last speaker, early for me, a little bit cold. And my brain's probably not working 100% now, but bear with me. So this talk is, as it says in the title, there's a redesigning tasks for listening and interaction. And so what I've been really interested in recently is designing listening tasks that sort of broaden the scope of what we teach about listening. And so I'm thinking, I'm not trying to replace standard approaches or anything like that. I still do really traditional listening activities, but also trying to complement them with maybe some new directions. So just trying to think about how things could be a little bit different. So I'll give you a bit of the background, sort of motivating this. So I work with a lot of sort of newer teachers, and people often make comments to me about their struggle. They think, how do you teach listening? What do you do? And how do you teach reading as well? I think is a similar kind of problem, really. So for listening, it seems to me that a lot of what language teachers do, and certainly in terms of following textbooks, is really about setting up listening practice activities. So often when you're working with a textbook, you get a really limited range of things that we can do. So, you pre-teach vocabulary, set up a context to activate prior knowledge. Of course, you play the recording, maybe set up some interactive task where people are listening to each other. Of course, you provide the answers, and maybe teach a few things like basic note-taking organization. So a lot of it seems that our job is to facilitate. And with the exception of vocabulary, it seems to me that there's not a lot of teaching sometimes. I mean, note-taking skills and vocab, a few things, but not a lot of teaching.
Jonathon?
Now, to be fair, I think that's okay. That fits in nicely with some language learning theories like constructivist approaches, things that emphasize the need for learners to do things. And so that's fine. And I think, in that struggle of doing and reflecting, we develop new neural pathways. So that's all quite helpful. I think that doing is absolutely crucial, and I don't want to challenge that, but what I do question is whether enough instruction takes place. And we know that a lot of learners have huge difficulties with listening, especially outside the classroom. So I do wonder whether there's a gap between what we provide them with and what they actually need to do in real life. So is it enough to teach grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation, and then assume that listeners will get good enough at listening through practice? So that's what I've kind of been thinking about. So are there things that we should teach about listening? Now, I do want to acknowledge some of the really good stuff happening around that bottom-up phonology-based listening work. People like Richard Caldwell, and I saw someone earlier, very early this morning, my time, so I unfortunately missed that one, but doing something similar around that. But I wonder, what else could we teach as well? So something I've been thinking about is the real nature of listening as it occurs in ordinary interactions. So ordinary conversations, chatting, discussions, service encounters, meetings, and so on. And of course, that's where the majority of listening happens every day. And so I'm thinking, what are the micro skills involved in ordinary interaction? things that, and what are the things there that we could teach and practice. So that sort of, so thinking about it that way, then you think, well, what is listening in interaction really like? So I want to talk about two things within this topic of listening interaction. So the first thing, I think a really important part of listening in a conversation is what we might call participatory listenership. And that's where we display our listening. And we can break this down into two main things. So one is full responses, in which we hear something and then we respond. So someone asks a question and we provide an answer, or someone makes an offer and we either accept or decline, that kind of thing. So that's the full response. I think that, I think we do that a lot in our teaching, but there's also, the other one is that displays of attentiveness. And these are the small things that we do without actually taking a full turn in speaking. So we display attentiveness through various ways. So one is minimal responses. So those little things like, okay, yeah, those kinds of things. We'll talk more about those. And when I've talked about those minimal responses with teachers, they don't seem to give much emphasis to them, but for the learners that I talk to, they often recognize that they are really important and they don't know what to do when listening. So there's minimal responses, assessments, which often come at the end of a listening. You listen to something and then you recognize maybe that it's a sad story and you say, oh, that's awful, or some other thing like that. Okay, repair, of course, happens. We complete each other's turns at times, and then there's the nods, gestures, gazes, body position, and so on. Okay, and I was talking to a Korean nurse recently and about this sort of thing, and she's like, oh my God, that's exactly what I've had trouble with for years, not knowing how to respond. And so one of those things I mentioned on that last slide is those minimal responses. And Gardner, that's Rod Gardner, and he's the one that's done the most extensive work in this area, describes minimal responses as exquisitely complex. And his book, that 2001 book referenced there, it's nearly 300 pages dedicated mostly to 8 uses of 300 pages on that. So it is really complex. And he compares their value to that of the preposition system and the article system. So they are really complex. And it also turns out that these minimal responses seem to differ quite a lot between languages. And now there's not much information on how these responses map to one another across languages, but we do know that, of course, they differ in form quite a lot, and definitely in the rates of frequency. And so one language they have looked at it quite a bit is in Japanese, and they use these minimal responses much, much more than in English. And it seems to be for different purposes as well. So just to break things up a little bit, I'll introduce one kind of activity that I've been trialing to practice these minimal responses. So in this kind of activity, it's a conversation, and I have students sitting around in groups, maybe around a computer. It's normally where I've done it, but it could be around a recorder or something, some other sort of device. First, I get them to listen to a small list of these minimal responses and to get a feel for what they actually sound like. And then, their job is to select the best response for each stage of a dialogue. Okay, so I play a dialogue and it stops, maybe a little bit like that. Yeah, well, it stops and then they choose the right response. So I'll show you a little example here. The original conversation has 8 to 10 turns, and I'll just play 2 just to give an idea. So the first thing I would do is play these recordings. So I'll just play. Okay, you've got that. Now, I've got my son to record these with me. I hope you could hear that. Another one here. Hope that's loud enough. Okay, so they do a bit of listening and a little bit of practice with those. And then they get this instruction, you're about to hear a part of a conversation. Listen to speaker A's turns and select the most appropriate minimal response. Okay, so I'll show you how it works here. Sorry.
What have you been doing recently? Not much, but I've been watching the series on TV.
Okay, and then they select between the aha or O. And I don't know if anyone there wants to take a guess, but if we selected aha, correct, and you move on. If you selected this one, okay, so this indication that it's not correct. And then the conversation carries on. So right from that last turn.
Yeah, Dairy Girls? Don't know. Oh, it's so funny.
Okay, which one would you select there? Don't know if anyone wants to try, but okay, so not that one, it's the other one. So it's an activity practicing though, listening and recognizing what you should do as a listener, as an active listener. There's another aspect to this too, and something I've been thinking is a bit strange about listening activities in textbooks is that so often when students do the listening, they do it with a pen in their hand and they're reading and they're writing at the same time. Now, in the context where I work, where we have a high proportion of students that have never been to school and they've never learnt to read or write in their first language. And so pen and paper activities impose a really high additional cognitive demand on it. And so students often struggle to identify, what is it I'm meant to be doing? I'm listening, but I'm looking at, say, boxes and things. I don't know what to do. And we find this even with students who are really good at listening, but they don't really, it's a confusing kind of situation. So here's another kind of activity. Again, I'd sort of pre-teach and practice the minimal responses. And then pre-teach a couple of suitable story endings. So there's one there, that's so lucky. So that would be suitable for a story where maybe you escaped some problem, or another one, you poor thing, for a troubles telling, some sort of problem. Then I prepare an anecdote. So I usually do this live, but I think it could be done recording as well. So prepare an anecdote, preferably with stages that elicit different emotional reactions. So there could be suspenseful moments, funny moments, etc. And the student's job is to respond along the way, maybe with continuers like mm-hmm and okay, that kind of thing. And yeah, so they respond along the way, and then at the end, they should say something that signals their recognition, firstly, that the story is complete, that there is a conclusion to it, and also with a turn that shows appreciation of the meaning of the story, so whether it's sad or not, and validation of the teller's stance. So if I see it as a story of an unfortunate kind of thing, then normally you'd be expected to respond in that kind of way. So that's another kind of activity there, quite similar. Now, the other thing I want to move on, I see I've been talking for a bit, so I'll speed up a little bit. So the other concept that I've been thinking about a lot is the distinction between retrospective and prospective orientations. So listening activities only really deal with the retrospective. So for example, we listen and we write down answers about what was already said. said being past tense, it's all about looking back. What did he say? What did she say? Writing and missing words, that kind of thing. But in real life, now, of course, that's really important. It's really important, but also in real life, there's also an important dimension of looking forward, recognizing the action that's underway, recognizing what's coming and preparing yourself for it. This is not the same as the ELT concept of prediction or anticipation. It's a different kind of thing. Those concepts are not really theoretically based. They're kind of practice-based things. This is something a little bit different. And I'll give you a couple of examples now just to sort of demonstrate how it works. And probably you can guess what's going to come next here. So I put the pen, and I think you can project that there's going to be, grammatically, that there's going to be some prepositional phrase. I put the pen on the table. You can see that coming. This one here, guess what? You can project that the next speaker is going to say what, and then there's going to be a news announcement. There's going to be some bit of news coming there. So this is a kind of projection, but it gets more complex as well. I mean, this one's fairly basic. Good morning. There's going to be another greeting. This one here, what are you doing tomorrow night? Now, probably you can guess that what's coming is either going to be an invitation or maybe a request. So it could be, what are you doing tomorrow night? Do you want to come for dinner? Or it may be, what are you doing tomorrow night? Can you babysit for me? It'd be something like that. And projection works in other ways as well. Can you lend me a pen? Sort of request, be granted. There's various things there. It also gets more complex as well. So if you look at these two examples here, what we'd hope is that our learners would have conversations a bit more like the one on the right than the one on the left. That inference. Are you using that pen? You know that a request is probably going to come, so you leap forward. Okay, I'll just move on there. Here's another one as well. Just really quickly, I'll run through this. This is a line of authentic data from someone else's study. You can see speaker A says, she makes an invitation if you'd like to come and have a cup of coffee. Now, if we monitor speaker B's unfolding turn, I just wonder in your own minds if you can guess where this conversation is going. So speaker B starts with an exhale. Well, okay, obviously a little bit faster, but I think maybe by now you can guess that she's probably going to decline. And that's awfully sweet of you. I think by now you'd know that she's not going to take up that invitation. Indeed, she doesn't. And there's a lot of work and conversation analysis around how those pauses and those delays and things prevent the conversation going forward. Okay, quickly running out of time, so I'll move on. So just to recap a little bit, projection allows listeners to infer meaning, to steer the direction of the talk, to formulate a timely response, to take turns in multi-party talk, to avoid problems like loss of face, and also to ready themselves for unwelcome kind of news like that, turning down an invitation. If interaction was purely reactive, it simply wouldn't work very well. So what is forthcoming is mutually shaped by both parties. Okay, so how do we practice this? Well, a very simple very simple sequence is something like this. This is a sequence. I've been using this for maybe about 2 years and lots of different variations on it. But I play a short listening text involving an interaction. I play the sequence turn by turn, or in smaller units. And after each turn, students work on the following questions. So firstly, what did she say? So looking back, and then looking forward, what's the other person going to say now? And then I play that next turn and they check their answers. And I want to show you now just a really, I know I don't have much time, I'll show you a little bit of dialogue just to demonstrate, to show you that, that actually the students do find this quite challenging. So this is here, I played the first turn of a recording and it said, and it involves two students and one of them says, I'm going to be a bit late for class. So I said to the student, to my class, what do you think speaker B is going to say? And one student suggested, why are you coming late? Which I think is a little bit of an unusual question. Now, it could be. I responded. Another student said, why? So why are you coming late? I think we know that maybe this is possible, but it might also be a little bit intrusive as well. Another student saying it doesn't matter, as though this was an apology. And then I asked, what would you say if this other student, one of your classmates said, I'm going to be late? It's okay. Another student suggested, what happened? They want to know the reason. This kind of thing. So, and of course, well, in this particular case, in this dialogue, what the speaker was angling towards is perhaps, would you save me a seat or something like that? Okay, so I've run out of time. I was going to talk through some other transcript examples, but I'll just flick over that because we're out of time. But I suppose, where I'm going overall is that listening, as Siegel said, listening is characterized by the least developed and most routinized pedagogy. And so I guess this overall project I'm involved in is just thinking about what are some ways that we could open things up and do things a little bit differently. Just maybe, not throwing out the old stuff, but what new ways could we practice listening and teach listening? Now, I think that's time up, isn't it? So I'll stop there. Thank you. Oh, that's references there.
Thank you, Professor, for your presentation. Is there any questions from the audience? You can open your microphones, turn on your cameras if you want, use the chat.
I always have questions.
Sorry. Go on.
I'll notice.
No, but maybe someone else wants to ask something. Because it is a very interesting approach to task design, but also comes, still I feel that it comes from your perspective as expert on listening, right? As expert language teacher. But have you had the chance to talk or to test out these ideas with the students and finding out what they would like us for us teachers to do?
Good question. Yeah, I do. So I do teach English still. So research is part of the job.
Okay.
I've actually, just in the last few weeks, my job's changed a little bit, but up until now, I'm in the classroom at least sort of 2 or 3 days a week. So so all of these things I have trialed, and so I'm still working with them. I think they're all just basic ideas I'm just starting with. So it's been part of an action research project where I'll come up with an activity, give it a try, record the results, see what happens. And some things have been quite surprising, like the projection thing. At first I thought, no, this will be too easy. There's nothing here. And then it turned out that actually I could see that a lot of students were really they were quite into it. They were quite keen on it, but couldn't imagine what was going to come next. And similarly with the minimal responses as well. I remember right at the beginning, and this is a few years ago, just realizing that it was in another paper that we published, that realized that students really didn't know when to say or when to say oh or okay, or that kind of thing. And it was a surprise to us. Now, a lot of our students as well are from, at the moment, a lot of former refugees from places like Somalia, Syria, Afghanistan. Most of our students were Chinese, but with borders closed, most of them are gone. So, yeah. I suspect with Spanish students, you know, it's much more similar to English, isn't it? So it's maybe not, yeah, it's not the same challenge, I think.
I think you answered a question that I was going to ask, culturally speaking, depending on the students or age or culture of the students, that would depend a lot. That was my question. I think you just answered it, because I also taught in China for 3 years and found, yeah, different perspectives versus teaching ESL in the United States or anywhere else. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. Yeah, it is. Yeah, and you hear Chinese students, and they do have different little things that they say when they're listening, don't they? Japanese students as well. Mm.
And here we have Marco. He says, hi, you mentioned interesting ideas based on pragmatics and corpus linguistics. Do you think that students might benefit from an approach that includes instruction on these aspects?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, so far, I think so. I haven't sort of done any sort of pre-testing, post-testing kind of thing, but what I am getting is feedback. Like I mentioned that Korean nurse before. She was my student maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and so in a high-level English class, went to work in the hospital, and then we caught up maybe a year ago, and I was just talking about this project, and as I said, she was like, "Oh my God, this is what I've been struggling with. You know, when I'm listening to the boss or listening to patients, I don't know how to respond. I don't know those, when to say when to say okay," and so she just keeps silent, but so she's quite aware of the importance of doing it, but she just doesn't know. Again, because I think Koreans, yeah, obviously it's a really different language to English. So, yeah, so there's a need for it. Whether what I'm doing works, I don't know. I don't know yet, but I'll keep playing with it and see what happens.
Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you, Professor, for a very enlightening presentation. Well, now we have the coffee break. Remember to watch our wonderful classroom-based listening reset videos. We hope their understanding work proves useful for your future practice as well. Just so you can watch them online during the coffee break. Okay, good. So thank you.
Yes. Danny, can we share the links to the YouTube channel?
Let me see.
Yeah, but
yeah,
still
the chat. I will leave it in the chat.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.